This is KGW News at noon.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brenda Braxton. There is a new case of COVID-19 at an Amazon warehouse in Troutdale. That makes 3 infections at Amazon facilities in Oregon. Nationwide, the company reports hundreds of cases. The Oregonian reports the infected employee in Troutdale was last at the warehouse on Friday, and Amazon says it's informing anyone who may have been in close contact. A warning from Governor Brown that the state could see big budget cuts. She says the coronavirus could cause the state to lose $3 billion. The state revenue forecast comes out next week. State agencies have been told to prepare for cuts, but no final decisions have been made yet. Governor Brown says reducing critical state services will be a last resort. She adds she's now working to get more federal support. Well, starting Friday, life in some parts of Oregon may feel a little more normal. 20 counties, mostly in southern and eastern Oregon, could reopen restaurants and other businesses. The Oregonian reports those counties have few or no cases of coronavirus, and they've applied for state approval to reopen. Before they can do that, though, they will have to prove they meet certain metrics for testing and contact tracing. Then they can reopen restaurants and bars, salons, barbershops, massage centers, and gyms with physical distancing restrictions. More populated areas will have to wait weeks before reaching phase 1 of reopening. The Washington County Director of Health and Human Services estimates that county could start reopening in early to mid-June.
It's going in the right direction, and we just need to say thank you to our residents and community members who have been staying home and saving lives and flattening that curve. It's because of you that we're moving towards the ability to reopen.
Every county in Oregon will get to lift some restrictions starting Friday. Standalone retailers, including furniture and jewelry stores, can serve customers. Child care centers, summer camps, and youth programs are also reopening. We don't know exactly what that will look like, but state officials say they're going to share details this week about reopening child care. Of course, many people are really anxious to get back to work, but a group of local hairstylists wants to pump the brakes on that plan. They started a petition to tell Governor Brown to keep hands-on professionals out of the first phase of reopenings. They say they have to touch clients while cutting or coloring their hair. Many of the stylists are struggling financially, and some haven't received their stimulus checks. Still, they say they don't feel it's worth risking their own health and safety, their families, their clients, or their communities.
What we should be focusing on as a community is not sending us in as test pilots to see how it goes, but to get us all the financial relief that we need so that our businesses can stay afloat.
Even if they get the okay to reopen, salons and personal care businesses will have to follow strict requirements. Employees have to wear PPE, keep clients at least 6 feet apart, limit the number of people inside, and screen clients before they come in. Contact tracing will make it possible to reopen Oregon. Starting today, OHSU is sending out thousands of postcards asking people to volunteer for the Key to Oregon study. Researchers hope to recruit 100,000 volunteers across the state. They'll take their temperature every day and report the results to OHSU. Anyone who shows coronavirus symptoms would be tested. If they're positive, they'd get connected to treatment. The goal is to detect cases early and prevent any new outbreaks. There are now more than 3,200 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Oregon. The latest cluster is at Portland's VA Medical Center. At least 17 people there tested positive, 3 patients, 13 staff members, and a medical trainee. The outbreak started at one of the center's inpatient units. As a precaution, the VA is not allowing patient transfers from other facilities, and it's not accepting ambulances to its ER. There are now more than 1.3 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 nationwide. The virus has even found its way into the White House, where 2 staffers tested positive. As Tracy Potts reports, some of the nation's top health experts are now in self-quarantine.
More step where we're literally, as the president.
Several White House officials, including the vice president, are taking a break after 2 staffers tested positive for COVID-19.
It is scary to go to work. I think that I'd be a lot safer if I was sitting at home than I would be going to the West Wing. But, it's a time when people have to step up and serve their country.
3 members of the coronavirus task force are self-isolating. CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield, FDA Commissioner Dr. Stephen Hahn, and NIH Infectious Disease Director Dr. Anthony Fauci. They'll all testify remotely to the Senate this week.
I'm very concerned that the president is pushing the country to reopen against the advice of his own healthcare experts.
Vice President Pence is not in quarantine. A senior administration official says he skipped a national security meeting this weekend out of caution after his press secretary, Katie Miller, tested positive. So did a military valet who serves the president. Pence and President Trump have both tested negative.
There's daily testing, as you may know, for people who come into contact with the president and the vice president. Everybody wants to be safe.
The White House still reeling from dismal April jobs numbers.
We'll have a better third quarter, we'll have a better fourth quarter, and next year is going to be a great year.
But May could be another tough month. Despite states reopening, officials predict 20% unemployment. Tracy Potts, NBC News.